Welcome, everybody, once again to HR Tech Talks. My name is George Rogers, and as always, I am so glad to be here with you today with our special guest coming up. I'm excited about this conversation, and I know that you as well will find a lot of insights and wisdom from our guest today. I want to encourage you as you're joining in, make sure you join in and conversate. Ask questions. Feel free to drop your name and location in the chat. Want to know where you're coming from and joining us from today. But as well, if you have any questions for myself or our guest today, Ms. Lori, I want you to drop those questions in there, and we'll love to have the conversation in the chat with you as we dive into this topic of something that I'm very passionate about and I'm excited about having. So without further ado, I would love to bring our special guest with us today. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today here on HR Tech Talks. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, and I'm excited to be here and talk with you as well.
I am. It's a pleasure, and I'm excited. Can you tell our audience, for those who may not know who you are or even your company, can you tell us a little bit about both? Tell us something about yourself, maybe a fun fact, and share a little bit about your company as well.
Okay, sure. So I'm Lori Mazan. I have been an executive coach for almost 30 years. I ran an independent coaching practice for 20 years, actually, and started in the very early years of the coaching profession, way back in 1994. So kind of dating myself here. And surprisingly, I actually founded a venture-backed startup in 2016 and started operating in 2018. And I'm like, not your standard founder of a venture-backed startup. So that's been a really interesting experience. And that startup's called Sounding Board. We provide both the coaching support and the software to deploy dynamic development. And kind of this whole thing came out of my coaching experience where coaching was really reserved for the executive suite, mostly because it was so expensive. And secondly, because it was really hard to make happen and manage, and wanted to make that really cool and impactful leader development tool available for a lot more people than just, an exclusive group at the top. I recently wrote a new book. It's called Leadership Revolution, The Future of Developing Dynamic Leaders. And that was a really interesting experience. I know, George, you've had that experience of writing a book too. So if anyone wants to know about writing a book, we can tell you about it. And something unique about me, gosh, I'm trying to think of something new. Oh, well, I do have a 30-year practice, more than 30-year practice of the martial art called Tai Chi Chuan. And this is the thing where you see old people in the park moving really slowly. That's the sort of calisthenics approach to that art. But I'm in the martial version of that where you do sparring and weapons and that kind of thing. And it's been a fantastic both development tool for me and, physical practice for me as well.
Wow, that is exciting as well to be able to hear that concept. I think I always try to, today, the other day me and my friend, we have another podcast and we're talking about Thanksgiving dishes that relate to leadership and workplace culture. So I'm always wondering how certain aspects of our life tie into leadership, especially in the martial arts, right? There's a lot of discipline,
Yes.
a lot of things that can really relate into the leadership aspect of it. Speaking of Sounding Board and your company, what are some of the solutions, a little bit more in depth about what you're providing for clients? One of the things that we're seeing a lot today in the workplace is, as you said before, leadership development and coaching. That was really, at one point in time, really focused on the C-suite, the higher up. But now we're seeing it as something that's fundamentally needed for those emerging leaders. Those, as you're trying to grow your company, you want to keep those people that are really good and keep them developed. What are some things that you're providing your organization for companies that are looking to, have that standard of excellence for their leadership development?
Yeah. So first, let me I totally agree with you. Coaching and the sort of personalized, contextually driven development that comes from coaching is so critical these days. Like back in the last century, we did a lot of training, and that was maybe more useful back then when the workforce was more homogenous, more predictable, more structured. And now we need leaders who can respond to very complex, unpredictable environments, and just a sort of out of the box training just doesn't provide that kind of development that's needed now. So it's, to me, very timely that coaching is starting to expand to all kinds of leaders and even all employees in an organization. What problems are we solving? So I mentioned I've been an executive coach for 20 years, and I'm going to just tell a quick story from one of my corporate clients from the past. This was from about 2004 to 2014, and they were a drug development company, very large, and they were kind of on the cutting edge of coaching as a development tool, but they didn't have any way to manage the coaching program. So the poor HRBPs were pushed into now being, coaching deployment people, and they had to figure out who needed coaching. They had to source the coaches. They had to try to match the coaches with the participants. They had to try to manage the engagements. They had to try to look for some kind of impact they were having. And all of this was being done on paper and pencil, literally, or maybe some spreadsheets. And in 2016-17, when we were kind of specking out the company, we interviewed folks at large corporations. And guess what? They're still using paper and pencil, literally a paper survey or spreadsheets to do this. And it's really labor intensive. One of my kind of colleagues in that earlier company, I saw him recently, and he told me that less than 40% of those coaching engagements over that 10-year period had been successful. And these were really the top level people in the organization. So what Sounding Board does is we have a highly trained, highly effective community of coaches that we select and train and develop. And then we have a matching algorithm that's a relationship-based matching algorithm. And back in the previous company, the matching, was under 50% success rate, but our matching is actually 94% success rate, because with software and data, we can really fine tune who is going to work well together. And it's not just about what somebody might need to develop. It's about the relationship. And when the relationship is solid, then the development can happen in that container. We always said, if the company doesn't make it, we're going to sell our algorithm to Match.com, because our matching rate is so great. And then we also use the software to manage all those engagements. And the result of that is about a 90% utilization rate of our coaching, where it was a 30% utilization rate previously. And then it also lets us gather all the data across all of the complex and different coaching programs that organizations are running, and be able to have that data all integrated, so you can see what the impact was of all your various coaching programs. And you can do that globally versus just locally, because you had to source in-person coaches in the past. So all of this is done virtually, and the pandemic really helped us, because everyone figured out, oh, this thing can work virtually too. And so we've been really booming since then.
That's awesome. I want to dive into leadership, and just with a definition. I think a lot of people, and I'm interested, I love hearing people's definition of leadership. And so let's talk about leadership, and I'll go first for that.
Okay.
When I think about leadership, I always define leadership as love, grace, and trust. And the reason why I do so, a lot of that is because my leader, my coach, my mentor, who's my father. And so, three things that he always had given me and shown me was, hey, George, you got to not only love what you do, love where you do it, but you got to love who you do it with. And so it's important to love your team through the good and the bad. It's just like loving family through the good and the bad. And so having that love, loving those people around you, and it was really a fundamental practice for me that in order to lead people, it's more than just liking them. I got to be able to love them and give them that. The second thing was grace. I needed a lot of it as a young person, especially in my younger days of leadership, but showing grace and also trust. And the way he taught me that was before I can lead other people, the first foundation of leadership and true leadership is self-leadership. And so how well are you leading yourself? How well are you loving yourself? How well do you show grace to yourself? Because we can be our worst critic at times. And then, George, do you trust yourself? Before somebody else can trust you, before you put your plan and workplace, you got to be able to trust yourself and believe in yourself to be able to make those things happen. When you think of leadership, and Lori, I know as you wrote a book, I know this is a passion for you, obviously, but how would you define leadership? And then how do you encourage others to become that leader, develop that within?
Yeah. Well, can I just jump off of what you said? I have rarely heard people talk about love in the work environment, and particularly a man. So, yay for you. I couldn't agree more with the love part, even though, I don't talk about it that much either because people misunderstand it. But my initial name of my private coaching practice was Seventh Wave Coaching. And that was from the Sting song, Love is the Seventh Wave. Because I really do feel love is the basis of all of this. And I'm really glad you mentioned self-love, because if you don't have self-love, it's really hard to have love for others. I haven't defined coaching really as qualities. I define coaching in a little bit more practical way. Leadership in a little bit more practical way, which is you're a leader if people are following you. Like you're not a leader unless you can be a leader of yourself 100% all the time, but you're not a leader of others unless people are following you. So if they're following you by force or by fear, that's actually not leadership. They need to be following you by choice, by inspiration, by trust, by connection, maybe by grace, right? And so it's very simple. You can just look and see if people are coming with you. And if they're not, and you're just going off by yourself, you might be leading yourself, but you're not leading others. And if you think about it that way, then you have to realize leadership is actually not about yourself. Leadership is actually about the other people. It has your self component, of course, because for other people to trust you, you have to be authentic. And so your style of leadership has to also be authentic to you. And so cultivating that is a really nice practice. But it doesn't matter if no one's following you. So you're a leader when people follow you. And that doesn't matter who, in a business, in your neighborhood, your family, your spiritual community, out on the street. It doesn't even matter. One time I was taking my son to serve Christmas dinner to the homeless. And when I got to the place where we were going to serve the food, no one was leading it. And there was like 300 people already in the line outside. And I was like, uh-oh. So I just said, okay, I'll let me lead this. In like 20 minutes, we're ready to go. And we opened the doors. So you can be a leader anytime, really anywhere, as long as you do it in a way that people want to follow you.
Yeah. One of the things that I see in leadership, and a lot of times why some people struggle with leading, is the difficulty relating, connecting with others. What are some of the challenges that you see within leadership, especially how challenging the workplace has become? And we've seen a lot of changes right over the last 3 years, virtual, hybrid, flex, come back to the office, potential layoffs, and some of these different trends. We're hearing all kinds of things, and
Yeah.
the roller coaster ride just kind of goes for a loop. Like, what's next? What's the next thing? What are some encouraging things that you can give to those out there who are leading within their workplace, that desire to lead, as they're facing these challenges? What would be some of those encouraging things that you would say, and advice that you can give to them?
Okay. I mean, actually, this is kind of the premise of my whole book, which is the environment is so different than it was in the last century. Like, why are we still using approaches that work in a very different environment? Because the current environment, you just know, just even take the pandemic, no one saw that coming, and it fundamentally changed the way we work. So, guess what? The next thing is going to be the same. When no one saw AI coming, and it's going to fundamentally change the way we work. And next week, there's going to be something else. So, just the speed of change these days, the amount of knowledge that's available, the complexity of the problems, the sort of breadth of the problems, the up and down nature that you're talking about of things really requires leaders to dig deep and find some kind of internal compass for themselves. In the martial arts, we have a name for this and we call it central equilibrium, meaning you are able to stay upright no matter what kind of forces are coming at you. And I kind of like the analogy of being the eye of the storm. If you've seen those pictures of the big hurricane going and it's all blowing, you can see it all turning in a big swirl. But in the middle, there's that little clear circle, where it's calm and sunny. And for the leader to kind of find the way to be the eye of the storm, so you're not getting knocked over and blown around by all the changes that are going on. And you can keep your kind of sense of uprightness and stability, and face all of the new challenges kind of with that sense of balance. Like, imagine as a leader, when everybody else is getting tossed around, they are going to trust you when you are the one that feels like, oh, you're not getting battered by this, you're just still there figuring out what to do next to make it all work.
Yeah. That's important. I want to dig just a little bit. I know it's not necessarily sounding board, but I want to talk maybe just a little bit more about your book. I'm intrigued personally, a little bit more. What can people find about the book? And if you don't mind sharing it again, the title of your book, those for maybe joining us, share the title and like just kind of more in depth about that
Sure.
book.
Sure. So the title is Leadership Revolution: The Future of Developing Dynamic Leaders. Dynamic really being what we're talking about, that things are no longer static or slow moving. Things are just dynamically changing every single day. So, how do you develop leaders that aren't knocked over or tossed around by that kind of environment? The book's really interesting in my mind because it appeals to three different segments. So it can appeal to coaches or people being coached. It can appeal to leaders themselves, and it also can appeal to HR professionals. I actually wrote it for all those three audiences. And it's kind of unique because it's actually designed like a coaching engagement. So each 12 chapters design like one session of a coaching engagement. And so that chapter titles are about what you might do in that session of a coaching engagement. So I've heard from others, and I had really fun writing it, but I heard from others that it's a very interesting format. And it's not exactly a self-help book. It's more like helping you change your thinking. But at the end of each chapter, there are sets of questions you can ask yourself or others about the topic of that chapter to start to make some progress, with your own thinking and development, or the thinking and development of those around you. So it starts out on the first chapter. It's called The Big Leap. And that's literally trying to identify what's your big leap as a leader. where not just like a little step,
Yeah.
not baby steps, really like what's that big leap where you end up over there by the end of the process. And just starting out like that, like sets the context for, big transformation is possible.
Yeah. With leadership, there's always that changing business landscape within the workplace. A lot of our HR audience are probably thinking, we see change constantly. We're
Yes.
chasing that change, and
Yeah.
change. A lot of people are scared of it. I used to say, without change, there can be no growth. And I believe that change is something that is needed. I think the attitude of change is really dictated and determined based on leadership. If the leadership is excited about the change and there's some strategies and principles, then people tend to, take that the reign from their leaders. In this rapid changing business that we have, what are some key competencies or skills that leaders need to cultivate to succeed or grow within their organization as far as support goes? And how does that really connect with what Soundboard does?
Yeah, it really is true that you're not going to be able to get away from change. So, some of those key capabilities are strategic thinking. Like the way things are changing so rapidly, you have to be able to think out in the future, try to see what might be coming down the pike, and you have to be able to adapt and change really rapidly. So it's no longer, I mean, I've been around the block a few times, and I remember when we used to have 3 to 5 year strategies, or even 5 to 20 year strategies. Like now, it's almost impossible to do that because you don't even know what's going to happen next week or next month, much less 5 years from now. And yet, you still have to try to think ahead and prepare for the unknown, really. So that strategic thinking, I think, is a key capability. A second one related and connected to what you're saying is being able to provide direction. So providing direction means like head west or try this road right here. It doesn't mean that isn't going to change. It just means, look this way now. And the goal is to have everybody in the organization, looking the same way. So everyone's going in the same direction. But without leaders, getting aligned on that direction and then being able to articulate that direction repeatedly so that people don't go off on the side roads, the organization can really get chaotic and dispersed in the face of all this change. And I would say maybe a third capability is really around the interpersonal skills, really having compassion for the impact of change on people. Like during the pandemic, we really picked up in our coaching because not only did the leaders need help leading, but their whole life was in disarray as well. So they needed to, get themselves stabilized and then be able to help others as well. So that compassion for yourself, compassion for others, the curiosity around what's possible, the, you know, deep listening skills needed to help people move beyond their reaction to things. I think in the face of something like AI, what's going to make the difference between something AI generated and something human generated? Some of these human qualities that, at least so far, the technology can't mimic are the things that are going to make a big difference.
Yeah. That's so true. So true. I always say, especially for those who are interested, and I want to encourage those out there that are listening. So once again, soundingboardinc.com. You can find more information about them and what they're doing as far as their leadership development and coaching. When people are really trying, organizations that are seeking this and looking for this development within the workplace, I always give them 3 key strategies or tips. Whenever you're interested in really getting leadership development, it's a lot more powerful in my eyes than leadership programs and a training. Leadership training is one off here and there, but having that ongoing development, the power of it is so huge. And I I stand strong on, and not just because I'm in this space as well, but I stand on because I know the impact that it does for people like myself,
Yeah.
who are having that desire, want to use their strengths that's beyond just their work job description, that want to really connect and help bring value to the organization. There's three things I always say: is always for organizations to grow cultivate a growth mindset. Make sure you have that mindset. It's the foundation for things. Fostering that, number two, fostering that authentic relationship, having a genuine trust and showing grace and caring for others. In our research at Lighthouse Research and Advisory, we talked about the psychological definition of belonging within the workplace is when an employee feels like they are respected, accepted, and appreciated by their direct leader, and the power and the impact that it has within the workplace, not just from an engagement standpoint. My belief is that when people are engaged and really have that sense of belonging, it goes from engagement to fulfillment. And so the power that leadership development does is really, really, really important for long term. When you talk about retention, having leadership development does that. And when it comes down to it, you say, George, what does it look like? And this is the thing that everybody asks me. And it's number three: customize and personalize it. Leadership development,
Okay.
each thing is different. Every organization, every industry is different. And so you got to be able to adapt. The most important is that Lori and I, we're both passionate about leadership, but we're different. We're all unique individuals. And so being able to customize and personalize it. And what I like to say is, understand your employees, your teammates' love language. When it comes to customizing, I need to understand what makes Lori move, what makes Lori excited, what gets her out of her funk when we're having those bad days or slow days. Is it personal? Is it business? Knowing that I can show up for Lori to be there is so important in leadership development. And I get excited about it. So this conversation is great, Lori. As we're wrapping up today, I want to give you the last word. If there's anything on your heart, or if there's something that you can give to the audience that are listening today when it comes to whether it's seeking coaching or leadership development or just having that growth mindset, what's something that's on your heart about this passion that we share together?
I mean, I'll just say it all starts with you. If you want motivated employees, then you have to be motivated. If you want engaged employees, you have to be engaged. If you want deep relationships that then result in deep engagement, you have to be the one to initiate that. So as a leader, you're always the role model and the one initiating this. um I think it's hard as a leader to always be that person, but if you're compelled to step into that role, that means you have something inside you that is there for you to cultivate and use on behalf of yourself and others, and really to make a difference in the world. So if you have that draw towards leadership, I really encourage you to get a coach, get support, get help for you to really lead in the best way possible in the context that you're operating in.
Thank you so much for that, Lori. For those out there that are watching right now, that want to connect with you, learn more, what's the best way to connect with you? Where can they find you, your company? You mind sharing that information?
Sure, you can find the company soundingboardinc.com at the three W's. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Lori Mazan, LoriMazan. Shockingly, I'm like the only Lori Mazan on the entire planet, so you'll be able to find me. And you can also get me at Lori at soundingboardinc.com.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much, Lori, for your time. I appreciate you joining in today and talking about leadership, talking about coaching. It's been a blast having you with us today here on HR Tech Talks.
Thank you. Completely my pleasure.
Thank you. Wow, that was always great. I'm so excited about this. Hopefully, you found some insight, some wisdom from Lori on this conversation. Once again, I'll throw all her information into the chat for y'all today with her link in, and also soundingboardinc.com is where you can find more about the organization and the work that they're doing there that is so effective. I want to encourage everybody today to join in. If you have not, make sure you sign up to get a notification every time we go live here at HR Tech Talks, whether it's myself or my good friend Ben Eubanks. You can go to hrtechtalks.org. Once again, that's hrtechtalks.org. You can find it right below there on the banner to get more information about all things HR Tech solutions and some of the upcoming dates that we have going on as well. We appreciate everybody joining us here today. And as always, we'll see you back and better next time. Thank you so much for joining us here today on HR Tech Talks.